wherever the work of deen is and wherever the effort of the Prophet is being applied, there is always barakah in those communities. The reality of the matter is no one knew Makkatul Mukarramah till Ibrahim alayhi salam came there. It was min ghayri dhi zar'in 'inda baytika al-muharram. It was a land that was unable to give any benefit. It was a land that had no vegetation, no crops, no animals. It's a stretch to think about the fact that there were human beings there. No one was there. And then a family came and they committed to sacrificing their time, their energy for the sake of growing deen. And today there's no city as vibrant as the city of Makkah. There was a time that the city of Madinatul Munawwara was known as Yathrib. The city's name was Yathrib. Anyone know what Yathrib means? I know, mashallah, majority of the community or a great number of the people in this community are Arabs and Lebanese. So I shouldn't be asking you about meanings of words, but the meaning of Yathrib is sickness, is flu. That the name was synonymous to a sickness. That people would avoid the route of Yathrib. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah says, people would avoid the route of Yathrib because they were afraid to fall sick. The Prophet's father passed away in Yathrib. The Prophet's mother, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, left this world on her journey back from Yathrib. It was a city known for its sickness. But however, when the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, entered this city, Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu says, لما دخل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المدينة أضاء منها كل شيء. The moment the Prophet entered the city, it illuminated the entire city. And the name of the city changed from Yathrib to Al-Madinatul Tayyibah, Al-Madinatul Munawwara. That he said, after today, no one will refer to the city as Yathrib. Now it's the purified city. It's the sanctified city. It's the illuminated city. And the cause of the name change had nothing to do with the landscape, had nothing to do with the infrastructure and the economical resources. The name change was simply because now the city had people present like the Sahabas. In the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, the beauty of our deen is that the barakah and the blessings and the sense of sakina, it transfers wherever the work of Allah is taking place. How the Prophet says in a beautiful hadith, whenever a group of people gather for the sake of remembering Allah, like how we are today, we have no other incentive from each other. We're gathering because we love Allah and we love the Prophet ﷺ, and we love each other based upon that foundation. He says, whenever a group of people gather for this purpose, they are gifted 4 beautiful benefits. They're endowed with 4 blessings. And each of these blessings is actually the focus of our life. We're always aiming to earn these blessings. And they're earned by one thing. And this is what we call barakah. One movement, different forms of impact. But you're only doing one thing. But the efficiency of barakah is that one movement is able to create ripple effects in your impact. You're not in 5 places at one time, but the effect is being felt in 5 places. So the Prophet says that these 4 effects are A, نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةِ, that Allah allows peace and tranquility to descend upon those people. Sakina. One of the words for homes in Arabic is maskan. We call a home because it's a hub of sakina. It's a hub of peace. And even those who live in those homes and reside in those homes, if they don't feel peaceful, and if they don't sense tranquility, even they don't want to be in that house. Because there's no sakina in the house. There's no peace in the house. So Allah, the Prophet says, نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةِ. Sakina is found in the gatherings of the remembrance of Allah. Allama Iqbal, he would say, نَكَهِينَ جَهَامِ أَمَامِ لِي. Does anyone speak Urdu here? Before I say the poem, because no one speaks Urdu, I won't say it. Anyone? Hey, we got a few. We exist, right? You exist, right? I speak Arabic too, so I'm all right. But he says, نَكَهِينَ جَهَامِ أَمَامِ لِي. جو أمامِ لِي تو کہاں ملی میرے جرم خانہ خراب کو تیرا عفو بند نواز ملی. He says, nowhere in this world was I able to find peace, sakina. And I tried everything. Like today in the world, People are attempting new things to feel the sense of sakina that they wish to have in their life. So every day you hear about a new ideology, a new concept, a new trend and a new fad, but for the same outcome. But consistent outcomes can only be achieved by consistent systems. And the system of sakina is Allah's remembrance. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah says, in a similar quote is referenced by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, where he says, consistent or temporary emotions will be earned through temporary things. So wealth is temporary, it can only give temporary emotions. Family is temporary, it will give us temporary impact. And he says the only thing which is everlasting is Allah. So it will give everlasting emotions, everlasting feelings of joy. قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. The only time Allah says in the Qur'an to be happy is in this verse. Nowhere else in the Qur'an does Allah command us to be happy. Because happiness isn't the goal. Being content is the goal. Happiness is a concession. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says that the default state of life is difficulty. And the concession is happiness and ease. Therefore, gratitude is felt because a person knows it's a concession. And they don't believe it's a default state. So, نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةِ. We're sitting in this gathering. I know it's a beautiful Islamic school anyways. There's always good things happening here. But in today's session, speaking about the Prophet's life and the Sahaba's life, we will feel sakina, inshallah. The second effect is وَغَشِيَتُمُ الرَّحْمَةِ. That Allah covers the gathering with His mercy. And the angels, they announce, the moment we stand and leave from this gathering, the angels will announce, قُومُوا مَغْفُورًا لَكُمْ. Stand as you have been forgiven. Simply by sitting in the gathering, a person is forgiven of their sins. No one earns a raise just by showing up to work. They have to fulfill their tasks and their duties. But the Prophet is saying, simply by sitting in a gathering, وَغَشِيَتُمُ الرَّحْمَةِ. Number 3, وَحَفَّتُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. That Allah protects us through divine intervention, through the presence of angels. حَفَّتُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. When the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu were in the cave of Thawr, and the mushrikun were looking for them, and Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu said, لَوْ نَظَرَ تَحْتَ قَدَمَيْهِ لَأَبَصَرَنَا. If they were to look beneath their feet, they would find us. Such a state of fear, such a state of anxiety. But Allah protected them through divine intervention. This is what it means when Allah is in our life. Divine intervention was through a spider web, not human beings, through angels. And lastly, the greatest effect of sitting in a gathering of such a nature. Cultivating a home that remembers Allah. Cultivating an environment within the home where the Prophet's mention is happening continuously. The fourth effect is وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. That Allah makes mention of our names in the gatherings of angels. And our names become famous in the heavens. Though fairly unknown in the world, our names become common within the people of the heavens. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ. You remember me, I'll remember you. One day the Prophet ﷺ came to Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, and he says to him, Ya Ubay, إِنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَنِي أَنْ أَقْرَأَ عَلَيْكَ سُورَةَ الْبَيِّنَةِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered me to recite Surah Bayyinah to you. لَمْ يَكُنِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Even the mashayikh and the hufad that lead salah don't want to read this surah. Right? Except for Shaykh Ali, because I'm sure his Qur'an is very strong. But people like us, we always avoid Surah Bayyinah. It's too complicated for us, right? We'll just jump to Surah Zilzal. But he said, Allah has ordered me to recite this surah to you. And Ubay ibn Ka'b stops in his tracks and he says, wait a second, Ya Rasulullah. Asammani Allah? Or qala asammani Rabbi? Did Allah actually say my name? Like, stop kidding with me. Did Allah actually say my name? Or did He simply say, recite the Qur'an to one of your companions? And the Prophet looked at him and said, no. Sammaka Rabbuk. Your Lord called you by your name. And he was so overwhelmed with joy. Like there is no one that is comparable to Allah. But imagine someone you look up to and they're your like everything. And they call you by your name. It's like, oh my God, this person actually knows that I exist. Of course, Allah knows everything. And he started to cry and his tears started to stroll down his cheeks just because Allah mentioned him by his name. This effect is felt by every single person sitting in this gathering right now. We believe, نَحْسِبُ كَذَلِكَ, that Allah is saying our names to angels. And when we leave this world, and when we enter a realm of the unknown, where there is nothing but fear and perhaps sadness and anxiety, the response that will be given to us will be, لَا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't be afraid, don't be sad. Why? نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ. We're your friends. We know who you are. We know your names because Allah would mention your name quite often. You're well known to us. You're not a stranger to us. So when we sit in these gatherings, for the sake of understanding why we're here, is to be mentioned by the greats, being mentioned by Allah within the gathering of the angels, feeling sakina, knowing that we'll be forgiven, and knowing that we're being protected. This is why we're in these gatherings. It's an honor for us to be here.